The losing streak is over. Boston College crushes Syracuse to end the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details, you're in the right place. Locked On BC is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's show, 34 to 12, Boston College smokes Syracuse with a strong second half to end the 2025 season with a victory. This is a first live show that we've done since Fordham that actually can be positive because BC wins a game. So let's get into this. This is our post-game show. This is going to ride into what's going on. Let's get into what happened in that first half because, man, was that tough to start off. Second play of the game, I'm already watching and I'm going, oh no, it happened. Dylan Lonergan gets hurt. They go right to Grayson James. And the offense looks bad. You see Dylan Lonergan getting off the field. He's got his thumb in a cup of ice, and he goes off to the medical tent. Then they pull him off, and I'm going, oh, man, if Grayson James can't figure this out, we're in trouble. First half, they got the ball moving a little bit. They scored 2 field goals, but it still didn't feel good. It felt like every other game that BC has found a way to lose, and going to halftime tied 6-6. Now, luckily, the defense made some plays. Also, Syracuse has no offense of any sort. I don't know what they were doing out there. Joe Filardi he could not do much. And then they tried some gimmicky stuff with Dan Villari, who, credit to him, had some decent plays, but that was not enough to sustain drives. Going to halftime, you're feeling that oh man, this is not looking good. It's 6-6. They're home. This is senior day, their last day of the season. Syracuse is going to find second life. BC starts a 3-and-out on Syracuse. They get the ball to start the second half. And then BC proceeds to pound the snot out of the Orange for the rest of the game. You saw huge runs from Turbo, Jordan McDonald, and Jordan McDonald, like 4 touchdowns between the two of them. On top of that, all of that, I was tough on him for the first half. Grayson James looked fantastic in the second half. He found what he needed to find, looking downfield, and I think the big thing that he found was Lewis Bond, because Lewis Bond had quite the finale for Boston College. In this game, he had 8 catches for 177 yards, or 171 yards. No touchdowns, but every time Grayson James needed to look downfield, Lewis Bond was wide open. I mean, I don't want to undersell how bad Syracuse's defense was at points, but he was wide open a lot. So Syracuse decided to put their best corner on Reed Harris and made 2 plays in the end zone on him in this game and stopped him. But they had no answer for for Lewis Bond. Lewis Bond just ate them for lunch. They could do nothing. And so you got those 4 touchdowns from your running backs. The defense clamped down. We saw some great plays. I want to make sure I shout out all the guys that had big plays. Hila Boykin had a couple big ones. Omar Thornton looked like what you expected Omar Thornton to look like. And hopefully he's here next year because, man, with a defense that is more competent than what we had for the previous part of the season, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Like, he can't do everything for you, but he can sure do a lot. And he had a sack. He had some big hits. He had that play. And I'm glad he didn't take him out because I was always afraid that they'd bring in another quarterback who would suddenly find life and then Syracuse would be good. But he hit Filardi, and I was like, oh, there's that hit. He didn't hit him hard enough to knock him out of the game. So good for that because I did not want to see Filardi out of this game. I wanted Fran Brown to eat that one for the rest of the game. So here is what I'm thinking of this, right? This is a big win. You're 2-10, but you beat your rival. You did not go 0 for the ACC. You did not go 0 for the FBS. And you showed that you still had some life. Because if you go back over this last month, every single game, BC was in it. Other than, I mean, even the SMU game, it fell apart real fast in the later part of that game, but Notre Dame, they were in it. Louisville, they were in it. Georgia Tech, they were winning. Most of these games, that's the frustrating part of this season was, BC was not that far off for large portions of it. So that's going to lead into a lot of our conversations going into the offseason. But these last two games, Georgia Tech and Syracuse, showed you a better piece of, especially what the offense could do. Still showed you, Georgia Tech showed you what the defense had issues with, but it's Haynes King. You're going to have trouble with that. But it was a great second half. The first half was very, very BC Syracuse for what both these teams have gone through the end of this year. But the end, you saw Grayson James end his career with a win. Credit to him again. I want to make sure I say this out loud. Like, this is the second straight year Grayson James has been asked against Syracuse to come in the middle of a game and take over. Last year, it was when Tommy Castellanos got benched. This year is when Dylan Lonergan got hurt. He went out there. He did it. He made good passes. He limited mistakes. He had that one play where he was getting sacked and then seemingly threw the ball. It looked like it could have gone backwards, and that would have been a disaster, but luckily his knee was down. Other than that, like, no bad throws. Like, Syracuse, their secondary isn't that bad, but he made them look bad at times. And good credit to him. I thought he looked great. The offensive line, pretty good. They did not have to do a whole lot in this game. But, when BC's able to run, especially the second half, they ran for 114 yards, I think, in the second half. And they were able to, basically dominate. I mean, that I think it was the last Jordan McDonald run. He went in not even like untouched. It was like the parting of the sea when he went in. It was just like completely just no one in the same area code as him as he walked in. So I was happy with that. I thought that was great. You saw a lot of the guys play that needed to play. And, I think everyone had their last game moment that you're hoping for the guys that are leaving. Lewis Bond had 8, as I said, 170 receiving yards. He was 7 yards short of a 1,000-yard season, and Bill didn't put him in that. Like, he could, the part that's kind of stinks, and I'm sure Bill will probably talk about it, was they had one last drive after he hit 993. All he had to do was catch a 7-yard catch, and he'd have 1,000 yards, and they didn't even put him in the game. I'm guessing they probably wanted to save him so he didn't get hurt, but that was kind of funny. You saw that. You saw Grayson James have his big game. You saw, some of the guys that have been playing for a long time with the offensive line. They dominated at different points in this game. That was great. They definitely shoved around George Rooks a lot, which was kind of fun. So a big win. In a moment, where does things end now? How does this shape how this season ended? We'll get into that in just a moment. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best week to jump in because their cyber sales is here, and the deals are huge. I got a box with steak, dessert, entrees, and an appetizer from a family member. I think it was like 2 years ago at this point. It's one of my favorite gifts I've ever gotten because I got a nice, really nice meal with my wife. It was really thoughtful, very different, and I loved every bite of it. I can't recommend them enough. And you can save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks by visiting omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off your select favorites during their cyber sale. And an additional $35 off. Use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. Thank you to all my everydayers who have been part of all of this season. Now we hit the offseason. It's going to be crazy. Hopefully you guys are not going to go away because we've got transfer portal. We've got National Signing Days a couple days away. There's a lot still going to be going on, even though BC's not going to a bowl. So what does this win mean for BC? does it take away the tarnish of the rest of the season? And the short answer is no, it doesn't. But it does take off the additional sting, because what you had going into this game were two teams that had similar struggles. Syracuse was very top heavy with their talent. They had a couple good wide receivers. They had a running back who was really, Yasin Willis, and then Steve Angeli, who is very, very good. Angeli goes down, their season goes down the toilet. That is not that far off from what happened to BC. It's a different style because BC just lost a ton of depth on their defensive side of the ball. I mean, we've gone over that over and over and over again. So I don't believe that BC should, lose some credit for winning this game because they beat a down Syracuse. No, this is a down BC team too. But you know what happened here? BC showed heart. BC showed they lost 10 games. It didn't matter. They were going to go out there and play physical, and they weren't going to give up. They were not going to go out there and roll over. Even when it was 6-6 at halftime, this team was still full of energy, and they came out firing in that second half. And that's something they should hang their hats on. There's a lot that goes back and will go into the season, but a win like this, a win when you can go on the road, start off slow, lose your starting quarterback. I mean, just like how many more times can this happen this year? A fluke injury to Dylan Lonergan. Everything still seems like it's stuck in the mud, but somehow I don't think it's adjustments. I know folks are going to say, "Oh, they made adjustments at halftime." No, it was execution, and maybe a little adjustments too. You know what? Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair there, because they did make an adjustment, which was get the ball to Lewis Bond over and over again. That's a pretty good adjustment. But on top of all of that, I think it needs to be said that this team had heart and that they did not quit on Bill O'Brien and the staff. For as much as everyone out there, not everyone, but lots of you out there just want everyone fired. Some of you are done with Bill O'Brien. Some of you are done with Tim Lewis and Will Longan. Hey, I'm not judging you for saying any of that. I'm just saying, for the most part, this roster stuck together. The roster wanted this win, and they went out there and got it today. What could have happened is what's happened to Syracuse. Everyone loves Fran Brown. Everyone talks so highly of Fran Brown. He lost 70-7 to Notre Dame, a team you only lost to by, a late touchdown, and you were in it until the fourth quarter. They also just got pummeled at home on their final game against you. So that shows to me that there's still a piece of BC and a real piece of this team that showed that that the soul was still there, and that barring this catastrophic injuries and issues with some other things going on too, BC could have still had a big year. I mean, just look back at all these losses that BC had. Cal, if Dylan Lonergan doesn't throw an interception into the end zone, on a pass that he should have never have thrown, BC could have been 3-9. You add in, if they could have slowed down Haynes King once, you could have been, 4-8. There's so many of these that you could do this for. Michigan State, Hayden Childs, how could you not slow him down? There are all these little things. So when I hear that this is the worst team that they've ever seen at BC, and that this is the worst season of all time, it's hard. I get you. I get what you're saying. I get that this season has not been easy in any stretch of imagination. But the part that was the hardest for me was that so many of these games, they were so close. And that should be a glimmer of either hope that they can fix it, or that if this continues, then you don't have the right pieces here. I think it's more the former. Like, if BC last year, I'm just going to play this out. If BC last year went out there and got transfers, and I don't know, if that's a NIL piece or something Bill couldn't, manage, whatever, that could play, that could, compete, how many more wins would they have had? We're going to wait to see this offseason how much that changes. Like, is BC just going to continue going to pile up on the FCS teams in terms of transfers? hey, the FCS has already started their transfer portal windows. You see them already starting to name their players that are going in. I haven't seen BC linked to many. And the only ones I've seen are players that have played a ton, which is different than kind of some of the guys that they brought in. So I look at that. I look at what BC has, and I say there are things that they can change to get themselves back up next year. And this game showed to me that they are not as far off as maybe some folks think they are. I think if you get more talent in and stay healthy, that's the big piece. That's the piece I don't know. Bill O'Brien has not talked about specific injuries. We've heard pieces here and there. We heard that Dylan Lonergan was hurt. We heard Max Tucker had a broken elbow from Trevor Haas. We've heard all sorts of things, but we never really got a full answer on some of the other injuries. I would love to know what happened. What happened to Davion Crouch? What happened to Jaden Skeet? What happened to Amari Jackson and Syer Torrance? And can that be prevented? That's the big key. Is it a conditioning thing? Is it fluke? Because it's just one weird season where a lot of weird things happen? Or can BC learn something from this, make adjustments, and hopefully never have this happen again? Because I would love to not see a injury list that looks like an honor roll at your local high school or like a third of your roster. You know what I mean? Like that stuff is going to be what we take away from this. But as bad as this season was, and I joke around it too. I mean, I just posted something on Locked On BC because, hey, as someone who covers this team, I'm sure you as fans feel the same way, right? Like sometimes it's hard after losing 10 in a row. Just, people knowing that you cover BC or fans of BC, they come out to you like, oh, another loss, huh? To have this end with, hey, we beat Syracuse. That this is not 2015 again. You beat an ACC team. When the floor was so low at different points this season that you got out of it with that, at least that's a positive. I was hoping for this game to see what Dylan Lonergan does because that would be another data point. But here we are. We're kind of stuck here. And that's not where they're at. Now, I have not looked to see if the ACC championship has been decided by Boston College winning this game. I remember that there's like some weird thing if BC wins, like SMU's in, if like a bunch of other things happen. But I wanted to say too, for the players, I hope that the development that they got out of this will push forward. One player specifically, there's a couple that I would love to like highlight here that and they had good games today too. Turbo Richard, first of all. Look at where Turbo has gone from the beginning of the season to now. We talk about the wins that they could have had. Turbo had a few where we could have had a couple more wins if you know what I'm talking about. The fumbles didn't happen. For him to go out there, this game and last game, and run the way he did, should give you a lot of hope for the future. Now, you also probably are worried about, hey, what about the offensive line? I get that. But Turbo is clearly your running back of the future. You got to make sure you keep him here. And I think that won't be a big issue. I think you'll be able to keep Turbo here. Another positive from this team, that a guy that came, kind of popped a little bit that, we weren't expecting. Kalen Chudzinski, who again had another one of those big catches where I forget how many yards he had, because I think he only had one catch in this entire game. 41 yards. He had a 41-yard catch in this game. Completely out of nowhere. Great game. Love seeing that out of a young player. And so, I think you have a few other guys, especially, mostly on the offense, because the defense, they still struggled at times. Hey, Hila Boykin, I want to say shout out because he had a big game today. And Omar Thornton, I think, what we saw out of him really showed that this is a guy too that's going to be big. So in our final segment, let's give some final takeaways from this game. What are some final things that we want to mention? And we'll wrap things up there. We'll be back in just a moment. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps games every game exciting, especially when your team's starting to make that late push. I love the way the Celtics have been looking. Jaylen Brown, is he an MVP? You can get his points per game. You can find it on FanDuel. You can get alternatives. You can get parlays with this game. You can get it all together and so easy to use. I love using FanDuel, and I recommend it to you too. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Thank you so much for all of you who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And if you're an everydayer, if you are part of, making sure that Locked On Boston College is your first listen every day, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, wrapping things up here, I'm in a cabin in New Hampshire, by the way. It's celebrating the end of my Thanksgiving weekend. It feels good to end with a win. I got to say that. A win is always better than a loss. And just think of how this season would have ended if you just lost to that Syracuse team. A win, at least now, should show your recruits that, hey, there's a little bit of momentum there. Okay? We had injuries. There's a lot of things that were tough, but we still won to end that season. I think you have only a couple more days away. I have not heard any other BC recruits that could potentially flee. There's Femi Babalola, but I think BC's in good shape with him. I think he's going to probably sign when it's National Signing Day. That's big. Additionally, this win shows transfers that you can be part of this. Bill O'Brien and his staff can package this. This season isn't all dire in depth like you might think it might be when you're 2-10. This isn't because there's an issue here because you didn't have the depth, but there was also injuries, as I said before. You now can go into the portal, hopefully if you have the NIL to do it. Again, that's a big thing with BC. I don't know where they're at with that. But if you have the money to go out there and get some depth players at specific positions that you need help at, I look at edge rusher, linebacker, some offensive line help. I mean, you can go up and down. Even after this season, I like the players, but I would think you need help at like running back and wide receiver. There's going to be some needs here. You're going to need to address that. Having a win and not being able to go in and say, hey, we didn't win a single ACC game. This is a little bit more palatable to recruit. So that's a big piece too. And to your fans, to all of you, to everyone out there that bought season tickets, that went to a game, that watched them on TV, that follow them on social media, that make BC part of your life, having them win here has to be important. Again, the season was absolutely miserable. I get that. And it stunk to high heavens at times. But to end this against your rival, against Fran Brown, a coach that many people think is, the next up and coming thing, and that there's all these other schools that really want him. You owned him again. 2 straight years you have owned Fran Brown. That's a good thing. When your rival can't hold up against you, that's a good thing. So I like that. I think that there were positives that, we're going to be looking at. But also, I think we all better strap in. Because I think the portal is going, and I'm not saying that BC is going to have a huge portal exodus. There's guys that you just need to get back. Reed Harris, big one. That I wonder how things are going to change on this roster. I would imagine if there's any coaching changes on the staff, we won't hear about that for a little while. They may go and make a move because they need to, but you don't want to do that before National Signing Day. Some of these guys are recruited by them, and the last thing you need to do is the day before have them flip because you got rid of their positional coach. I would think that'll be a little bit further down the road, but that'll be something to look at as well. But you have guys that are coming back that I think will be a lot of fun next year. Hey, let's talk about a guy like Hila Boykin, Griffin Collins, Luca Lombardo, Kalen Chazinski, Dylan Lonergan. The pieces are there. You have to build around it. And that should start with your offense and defensive line. Honestly, that needs to be the biggest piece because, again, this was another game where BC just could not get a ton of sacks. They got pass rushes. I saw that, but they couldn't close the deal. So I think that's all things that they're going to be looking for. But hey, a win's a win. On Monday's show, I will be joined by Mitch Wolf, who will be giving you his thoughts on this game. It will be talking all about BC's season and any thoughts that we have before we head off into the offseason. And hey, probably on Tuesday, I've got so much to talk about. There's a recruit that committed. I don't even have time to record on that. I will get to that early next week, I promise. There's a new quarterback, Anthony Calder. Check it out on Eagle Insider right now if you have not already, but I'll give you my full comments on that for Tuesday's show as well. Thank you all. And thank you, everyone who's listened all season long. I appreciate each and every one of you. Really do. And follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. You can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatnot. I appreciate you all. I'll see you all again soon for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.